Georgianne, and this is a video about how to make the Sewn Transport Bag for Days for Girls. Jody is filming and I'll be telling you how to create the bag in different stages, but first we're going to begin with how it's constructed. The Sewn Transport Bag has a layer of PUL and a layer of fabric, and notice that the fabric is about 1.5 inches bigger than the PUL. Then you're going to fold over and finish the edges of the fabric. Slide the PUL under those finished edges. Fold up the sewn piece into that shape. Stitch the outside edges with the bag inside out. And the last step is stitching the outside for the final edge. And it will look like this when you're finished. You need to start with PUL to make a transport bag. You can either get it at Joann's in a bolt like this that is 64 wide. This is folded in half. Or you can order it from Days for Girls. 10 yards arrives like this. So now we're going to start cutting the PUL. So I have folded my PUL from Days for Girls into fourths. It is 60 inches wide from selvage to selvage, and that's a convenient measure because the transport bag needs to be 15 inches long. So you can get 4 pieces of PUL for a transport bag every 9 inches. So I'm going to cut 9 inches along the selvage. I'll end up with 4 pieces of PUL, each 15 inches long. So now I always put these shiny side up, no matter how they've been arranged in the past, however you've cut them, but shiny side up so that they're all facing the same direction. So now we need a little fabric to go with our PUL, and it's 9 inches by 16.5 inches. So in order to make that work best for us, I am going to cut this into 18-inch length. I open it up, and if I put 16.5 inches in this direction, another 16.5 in this direction, then I will have enough to make one more piece on the other side. So you can get 10 pieces for every yard. So now I'm going to cut 16.5 inches here and cut this in half, 9 each. So now I have 4 pieces that are 16.5 by 9. Again, place everything the same direction. Make it easier for yourself later. So now we have the 5th piece, which is 18 inches long from the previous cut. We need to cut that into 16.5 inches by 9. Now you have 5 pieces. 5 pieces for every 18 inches means you have 10 per yard. Cutting this way. Doing it any other way with the Sewn Transport Bag means you'll get a little bit less per yard, but the width of your fabric will make you decide how to cut it. Okay, the next thing we have to do is iron the edges over so that they're finished, but you can see that there's not very much space, only 3/4 of an inch on each end. So you have to iron down 3/8 and then another 3/8. And in order to do that, I kind of protect my fingers with this piece of cardboard so I can get a nice even 3/8. And then you fold it over again, and you'll be stitching this closed so that it'll be a finished edge. You do that on both sides. before we go to the sewing machine, we need to put the PUL in place. And it goes shiny side up in between that folded over seam that you're going to stitch on the sewing machine here. At this point, it would be a good idea to put a couple of clips there, either the Wonder clips or the paper clips, before you take it to the sewing machine. All right, we are going to sew down the finished edge. It's best if you start in a little bit from the edge and then reverse it after you get started. Otherwise, it tends to get stuck in that sewing hole. And you just zip along. You have a nice finished edge. Lost one. And again, you can do this several in a row. I usually do about 5 before it gets too busy for me. Be sure to back stitch at the beginning and the end. After you do one side, you gotta make sure you do the other. And make sure you're getting the PUL in between the 2 layers of fabric. So I've stitched one side, I'm working on the second side, and I have about 5 or 6 of these together. And once we finish these edges, we'll be able to start assembling it into a nice little pocket. String them up, and you just trim them apart very easily. Should only be a few stitches. Again, put them in a pile so they're all facing in the same direction. So we finished the edges, and now we're going to form the pocket that makes the transport bag. You start with the shiny side down, and I've made this little template so that you can fold down 2.5 inches. And what's difficult to see from the printed pattern is that you're pulling the bottom up and you're holding it back just 1/8 of an inch or so, even 1/16. You clip both ends, put 2 clips here, or 2 paper clips or 2 Wonder clips. It helps to put a 3rd one on the bottom, but that's up to you. But if you have the clips here, you can stitch down the sides without removing the clips until you're finished. So now we're going to put a 1/4 inch seam on the transport bag, and that's about the width of this presser foot. Again, it's best if you start in a little bit and then back stitch. Otherwise it tends to get stuck. And you can string them along just like you did before. Make sure that you always catch the PUL. Very end, back stitch, and we have all these strung together, and next step is to remove all the clips, take it apart, and turn it around. I've finished doing these side seams with about a 1/4 inch, and notice that this one's a little bit raggedy, so I'm going to clean it up because we do not want any exposed fabric on the inside of the transport bag. That is a breeding ground for bacteria and lack of cleanliness. So try and make sure that all of your seams are a 1/4 inch and no ragged edges. We're going to close them off when we stitch down the outside, but this is a little bit too much fabric away from the PUL. Might have been a result of not lining up my fabric when I clipped it together. Okay, so now we need to turn this right side out. We're going to turn it around, turn the flap out, then we're going to use this crochet hook to open up the corners, because we're going to need to stitch in these corners, and we want it to be nice and square. One of the questions that we've been asked is, do we have to have fabric and PUL? And the answer to that is no. If you only have PUL, you can use this sewn version to make a transport bag, but the fabric makes it sturdier. We think it will last longer for the girls we service, and it certainly makes it prettier than a plain white bag. Final step of the Sewn Transport Bag is sealing up this raw seam. And in order to do that, we've turned our transport bag right side out, we've pushed out the corners, and we're going to stitch along the outside to enclose that seam. So I'm going to sew both sides of this, and I'm going to use this side and I'm going to sew on the front of it, but when I sew the other side, I'm going to sew it on from the back side. That keeps the flap down while I'm sewing. Again, usually works best if you start in a little bit and then back stitch so you don't get stuck. Back stitch top and bottom, and now the raw seam is contained. We're going to do the other side by starting on the back. That helps keep the flap in place and prevents it from picking up while you're stitching. I'm going to trim off the threads. And the purpose of the transport bag is to allow the girls to get a soiled liner home and to do a little pre-wash. They would pick up their soiled liners by the ends that were held inside the shield pocket. They can fit in here folded very easily. They can put in 2 or even 3 that are just soiled and take them home, and it won't get anything in their backpack wet. However, if they do want to pre-wash, they would put one in there, put a little water in there, close the flap, and just sort of squeeze some of the menstrual fluid away. Then they can open it back up and tip it out. Do it again if they needed to, and then wash them thoroughly when they're finished. You can find the printed instructions on the Days for Girls website. It's the Sewn Transport Bag, no serging necessary, for all the dimensions, and with about a half a yard of PUL and a yard of fabric, you can make 8 transport bags, and it will take about an hour. Thanks for watching.